Good morning, guys. So, let's get into it. Today, you and I are going to talk about one of the most dreaded things in professional IT. It's probably the most dreaded thing there is for any company, and that is missing your deadline or realizing that there is no way you're not going to meet your deadline. And what do you do now? You've done what you can, and plain and simple, you're going to miss the deadline. Now, I can tell you from experience that when it comes to missing a deadline, I think that you should take just for your own sake. It's going to be harsh on you as the developer, but I want us to also kind of acknowledge the type of pressure this puts on the people working in your company, like outside of the development team. Take a step back and just consider the position that your project manager and your stakeholders and all of these different things, kind of how this affects everybody. Because it's very easy, at least from my perspective, to think about how you as a developer, you feel bad, you failed to deliver the thing, right? But we sometimes forget what it actually means and why these deadlines are put in place to begin with and why they're so important, because it doesn't really affect us. But imagine being the project manager, having to go to their boss, and the project manager, from their boss's perspective, they're in charge to make sure that the project is delivered on time. Imagine being that guy or girl to have to go to your boss and say that, oh, sorry, we can't deliver on time. And then your boss go, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? We have customers who we have told that we're gonna deliver. We're told them that this date, that's when we're going to deliver, and they have there's a cooperation going on. In my case, that's exactly how it works. Our business partners are building systems that are scheduled and depending on the thing that we are building, which means that they are now blocked. It cascades outwards. So schedules, for better or for worse, they're pretty important, and actually that's why in my opinion, that's one of the main reasons why the agile development style came to be, because in the old ways of working where and it's such a bad thing. That's why I think agile is I know the intention, but the thing is that this world was designed for waterfall, and waterfall is basically the idea that you simply plan everything out ahead of time and then you deliver on time. That's just as oversimplification. That's how waterfall is supposed to work, and that's how every single business on this planet wants things to work. For the most part, they just want to put in an order for what they need. It's the same. I mean, if you hire a delivery service, you just want to tell them where to deliver your package, and then you expect your package to arrive. Unfortunately, in large projects, and when it comes to time estimation and stuff like that, things get a lot more complicated, but it's still the desired outcome or the desired thing that you want. So what happens when you can't deliver? Well, what happens is that if you're really in a pickle, unfortunately, you might actually find that you will lose customers. You might find that you get legal implications. That's why, especially if you're a beginner, if you're starting out, you're starting with your own company and you're like a consultant or something like that, unless you know from a lot of experience that you can deliver something on time, never ever put yourself in a situation where you are legally responsible for meeting a certain deadline or something like that, because trust me, you do not want to be there. You don't want to be you yourself to be financially responsible for what could happen. So basically, this is the situation I've been in this situation a few times, and when it happens, the team, people deal with this in different ways. And I'll share with you the best way that the way that I think is most constructive to deal with this. And it's the way that at least I kind of think I measure a company's office culture's maturity a lot based on how they deal with this type of situation. So usually when this happens, it happens just, we kind of realized this issue just the other day, and we're going to talk about it in a meeting today at work. And my coworkers were like, I can like there's no good way to fail a deadline, but there are better ways to fail a deadline, and it shows a lot. At least to me, if the company that I'm working for, if it is the type of company I want to stay in, because I've been in companies where, a good example of how bad it can be is basically that the bosses immediately start looking for somebody to point their fingers at and start to blame and trying to find a black sheep or a scapegoat, somebody who can take the fall for not meeting the deadline, so that they can basically justify it to somebody. And usually that means that some heads will roll. And if you are in the sort of company where the perception is that, all right, we couldn't deliver on time, this is your fault as the developer, then you should quit that company immediately. Trust me, just quit. There is no way there's no reason for you to stay at such a company, because trust me, you are way, way too sought after on the job market to deal with that type of shit. Just quit. Because the thing is that if you're in that sort of company, the perception is that the only thing that makes a difference in how fast or how well something's being delivered is how fast you can solve the problem. That is not true. I can give you hundreds of examples where my ability to deliver has nothing to do with the delivery of the project, because the thing is that I can build as fast as I can, and if somebody comes around, if somebody outside comes and gives me different tasks and all these small things I need to be doing, or they change the scope, or somebody hasn't done, the prep work hasn't been done, so that the specification is unclear and we haven't thought about the different corner cases. There's all millions of things that can delay a project that has nothing to do with the development itself. So don't let somebody blame you as the only person responsible for not delivering on time. But if we want to talk about what should happen, in my opinion, it is that you collectively take responsibility for the issue. In other words, the project manager fesses up, talks and everybody that is included in your entire team steps up and says, this was bad. And then this is the most important part. What happens afterwards? You say, this was bad. And then you ask the question, what could we have done differently to make this go smoother in the future? Because the fact of the matter is, regardless of who you blame, regardless how angry you get, it won't change the fact that the deadline will not be met. So you have to ask the question, what are you going to do next time? So when you have this established, how you're going to deal with, next time and so forth, the question becomes, okay, how do you deal with the current deadline? And here's my tip to you. The best thing you can do is to sit down and try to figure out how you can narrow the scope. In other words, ask yourself questions such as, can we deliver almost all the feature and like slice away some stuff and deliver that at a later date? Even your customer, like if you go to your customer and you say, I'm sorry, we have too much to do. Can we deliver some of this stuff and then deliver the rest later? Because that's the only way we're going to get you some value. And usually the customer, when faced with the decision between not getting something and getting some of it and then the rest later, they're going to go with some of it and the rest later, for the most part. So that's personally the way that I think you should deal with these things. Ideally, you shouldn't, of course, never get into a situation where you don't meet the deadline. That's why it's so important to have an agile, working relationship, because as I said, the problem is that when you estimate things, it's very difficult to accurately estimate stuff, especially the further along, the further in the future something is, the more tricky it gets. So it's probably, I maintain that it's the scariest and trickiest thing in projects, not just software, but just in general, to accurately estimate the time it takes to deliver a very big project. And unfortunately, there's not much in terms of good solutions to this. My personal favorite is that you always think in terms of the smallest possible thing that you can deliver. MVP, 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 always. Your customers will want you to deliver the whole thing and always talk about the whole thing. But you as the software engineer, you with the experience, you know that the bigger the project, the harder it is to accurately estimate when it's going to be done. That's why you have to be the voice of reason and say, it's better for us to start building this very, very small thing, because I know pretty well that I can deliver this in the given time. And then when that's delivered, when I have delivered that, let's have the next discussion about how we can improve this thing, so you get that as well. Plan small things and deliver many small things instead of one big thing.